6 years ago, the Arab world was struck by a series of revolutions, which were later labelled the Arab Spring. Citizens of countries like Egypt, Yemen, Tunisia, Syria and Libya took to the streets, asking for better social and economic conditions. Now, the United Nations has released a report looking at the heavy price of the Arab Spring. The UN estimates that the Arab revolutions cost the region more than $600 billion in lost growth. That's equivalent to 6% of their total GDP between 2011 and 2015. In Syria alone, a 6-year civil war has cost the country more than $250 billion. That's almost a 75% loss in the country's GDP since the beginning of the conflict. The UN report also suggests that debt, unemployment and poverty across the region are on the rise. Well, for more on this, we're now joined by Angus Blair. He's the founder and president of the MENA-focused think tank Signet Institute in Cairo. Angus, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for talking to us. Firstly, why have we seen such losses then across the region?
If you look historically at the growth trends across all of the Middle East and North Africa, from Morocco to Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, down to Oman, there was a long-term trend of growth. And what's happened is that in the last few years, that trend has fallen as a result of a variety of actions, particularly in the states that have been affected by civil change. Some of it more than others, like Syria, Libya, and Yemen. The end result is that investment domestically and investment from outside the region has fallen sharply. Economic growth has fallen. It's way off trend. So you can see the difference between the long-term trend and what's happened since the end of 2010. So you've got that difference in terms of growth, in terms of investment, in terms of new jobs created clearly, and all of that has affected the region negatively.
So what needs to be done then? How do we reverse this trend?
Well, it depends, Paul, where you are. Clearly, there is still continuing to be troubles in Libya and Syria and Yemen. And to an extent, there are still changes in Egypt, but it's stabilized enormously. And in fact, it's quite likely to see, having seen weakness in the Egyptian pound in the last few months, we're going to see a strengthening now because of the changes in economic policy, which are a result of the changes that we've seen domestically, regionally, but now also globally because there's so much increased competition. It's very difficult to put any statement that will say when everything will get better in the region, because frankly, given the changes which are fundamental and which continue in Libya and Syria particularly, which affect all of the neighboring, and Iraq, affect all of the neighboring countries, the costs will continue to rise that have been done by ESCWA within the United Nations from the current over 6 billion, 614 billion, the estimate. It might be higher than that, likely to rise, quite frankly, until political solutions are reached, but there might have to be other solutions first before you go to a change in the economic equation of the region.
Let's boil it down and focus on one country. You're there in Cairo. What's your assessment of the efforts that Egypt has made to rebuild the economy there after the years of instability?
Frankly, the government since 2011 have not handled the economy well. I think that the policy responses, economic policy responses to the economic stresses have been weak, have not been optimal results. And the end result was that growth has always been much, much less than should be the case in a country where, frankly, private sector and household debt are so low. It's a highly responsive economy, actually, in Egypt. If the right policies in place, the economy could grow easily at 6%. And it's a very large informal economy. But in the last few weeks, we've seen a devaluation, which will hurt in terms of inflation, but also a free float of the currency. And that's as part of a package of policies, a new investment law, and other changes that I've seen for the first time since 2010, now increasing very significant interest in foreign interest in the capital markets, which is the equity market, the bond market, and also the private equity market of Egypt that we're likely to see in the next few months. But that's quite positive news. But in the short term, in inflation terms, the average person will hurt. But hopefully in the longer term, it'll help reset what Egypt is in terms of the attractiveness as a country to invest in from outside.
OK, Angus Blair, thank you very much for your insight. Thank you for talking to us.